단다고 시바에서 단조축이 뜻지당 가스나들니다. 조아르축 그 리강 돈나요. 단이 맞다바 임바 따빠따마 강을 몇 찍바래. 찍바래라 되네. 조아르축 상마 되네. 맞다바 임바 찍바래서. 니 맞다바가 나만이 장 가스고 되네. 단조르 그 리텐데 했더니 뭐소더니 초다 지르바래서 되네. 이렇게 첨보래서 내가 됐으니까 예쁠까봐 지금 해야겠다. 그것도 시바래서.
And so this is an existence that is extremely difficult to find. It's extremely rare within the 6 classes of beings, although the 6 classes of impermanent beings are the same in that regard. The far most superior a state to obtain is this precious human life, complete with all of the freedoms and advantages.
아니 되게 나는 가서 다다가를 토바래서 아니 다다가서 담질금만 이런 거지 또 아니 담질금만 이런 거지 톱성만 있나요? 이 토바지 부근 그 말이에요. 이게 냥볼랭 거예요. 그래서 그 말이데 돈 요바지 제고래서 그래 맞도 담질금 리도 톱성만 있나요? 그래서 그 리텐데 아니 딱 봐도 담바 가야 요 말이에요. 담치면 딱 비그라고 해서 어떻게서
And so, having realized what it is that we've obtained, we have all obtained this precious human body with the freedoms and advantages. Simply obtaining it is not enough. Simply to leave it at this obtainment is not enough. We need to make it meaningful and purposeful. And so the first thing that we look at here and that we need to understand is, although we have gained this precious human complete life, there is nothing permanent or stable whatsoever about it.
아니 다당가랑 소리 토비야 그 리텐데 다고 단주 니버가버에 했으는 거라서 니버가 짜침물에 했으니 뭐 주지바인 바 모두 침물랑 소리 리텐데 짜침물에 했을 때는 시바레 마통랑 소리 리텐 담줄 그 리텐 토차디다서 때 딱바레스 라고요 말봐. 네. 가서 짜침물에 리텐데 톱나요. 말랑 소리 리텐데 가서나더니 내가 가서나더니 딱바담바 가요 말했을 때 탐질 가서나더니 맞딱바당 지르비그라고 생각해서 근데 인디 다소 말랑 소더니 가서는 내라더니 가서 왔다. 영보지 랭고야 돼. 다더니 배 기침부터는 차요 버려서.
And although last night we were introduced to the fact that just obtaining this precious human life, complete with freedoms and advantages, is so difficult to find, is extremely precious. It is so important, extremely precious, rare, and valuable. Although we were introduced to that, there is nothing, no permanence in it whatsoever. There is no stability whatsoever to this that was so difficult to obtain. It is constantly in the nature of change. It is impermanent, and that's something that we all must come to understand very well.
나와야 아니 말아서 다티 그 고르건데 자 전부지게 봐. 근데 그 고르건데 그 전부지게 임바가 그 가르스는 좀 생각을 된다. 마음바데 가르스는 알아서 그 가르스 딱바담바 요 말이지. 마음바데 알아서 그 타지든데 내지 차크레스는 알아서 그 가르스를 땡땡 요 말와. 어디 인점 생각더니 가르스는 따따 알아서 라와 유비 갑들라 그 전부래스. 내가 알아서 라와 요를 왔다. 밀리톤이 라와 요를 와. 라와 유비 갑들라 되니 가르스 뒤졌더니 가르스는 냠보 메바 뭐제도 남이형 같은 데 가르스는 총라 따자 같은 데 마인바 되는 거라서 그 이말이 진데 거라서 리텐데라 돈이 요바지 냠보 요바지 제고야 되다 우리 되니 컨셉을 되니다 자 전부터 차이 버려야지.
And it's really quite amazing, though, that we have gained this a precious opportunity, this amazing opportunity, now that we have this precious human life complete with the freedoms and advantages, or freedoms and endowments. Although it is amazing opportunity, as we talked about last night, one that should not be overlooked, In the future, whether it will remain is not sure. It is not certain. This life is not stable or permanent. We don't know how long we will stay. So at this time, while we are here, at this very time, while we have the freedom of choice, the freedom of action, we should put this to use, and we should avoid pointless activities and avoid meaningless distractions, and rather always engage in meaningful, purposeful activities.
대화가 람가테 같은 고츠기야. 근데 고츠게 딴데 되는 거야. 람가테라 코란타니 가서 탁쳐봐. 대다 람나슨세 람나슨 봐. 말아서 딴데 되는 리텐다 딴 되게 땅다냐면 보지니 가서 딴데 되는 람나슨 거야 돼. 기침보내서.
And so now that we have the support of the human body, then what is crucial for us to do is to enter and remain on the certain path, on the stable path, on the path that will lead us to a stable and permanent happiness. And so we always need to embrace this mind that engages on this path to certain happiness.
근데 나서다 다당가랑 솔라랑 요바레스. 근데 주님은 제거나 아니가잖아. 근데 상년리가 가르치거나 소소그 담카 열어봤더니 소소다 담카제 요바 소소그 가르치나 내가잖아. 삼로 땅 탑이야. 네 삼로 땅에 때라 탑시 용서야 요바 소소다 가르치나 라원세 그랬을 때. 때라 라원라고 라원세야 돼. 근데 이 라원세야 돼. 배자침보러 와. 근데 나한테 소소 차상들 때니 가르치나. 때니 라원 요바스 때니 따다가 가서 라원 요비를 리텐데 토비어 바레스.
However, and now at this very time is when we have the freedom of choice. We have the freedom of choice of our own actions. We have the freedom of choice in our Dharma practice, what we will do for our Dharma practice. We have the freedom to choose what we will do tomorrow. It's our choice. We also have the power to think, to discern, to plan, to find solutions. And while we have this very intellectual capacity to do this, and the freedom of choice, and this precious human body of support, is the time that to put it into action. Is a very important time.
돈덕 친구 맞춰서나 하고서 돈덕 친구 지금 만져봐. 돈 친구 지금 만져봐. 돈 친구니 만들어서 나는 마음발라 양치를 가서는데 nenri gatani lirtende top tugre besena ngaraso yangchen de gatani tamjur ku lirten melinde top tugre besena tene top tugre inna yang ngaraso ta disul kade chigla tene topate ngaraso la tenden yo mares tengi ba yo mares.
And so at this time, if we don't put these conditions into use and engage in purposeful activity, not engaging in purposeful activity, then will we actually in the next life once again obtain this precious human body complete with freedoms and endowments? We will in the future gain a precious human birth, but the time exactly when that is not at all certain.
Tata soso geteni nyamnende la rali yores. Ne soso ge chuteni nyamne yapo jine arsana teni kansa soso ge tariga litende dondang dama tariga ngarang so litende nyambu chigyo ba che tato tupso ayina Tenikars and Mambala Yoni on the Sokoshku Yakon to Tobiata, Tenikars and the Council, Deni Devi Lamna, Rotaviata, and also the Riva Chimbuya.
So when exactly we will again gain such a precious, valuable opportunity, such an excellent opportunity of this, we cannot be confident about that. We cannot have any complete confidence of whether we will gain such a precious human body completely endowed again and again. But whether or not we do gain, when and whether we again obtain a precious human body complete with freedoms and advantages, completely depends on our Dharma practice, completely depends on our Dharma practice and our spiritual endeavors. If we take this precious human body that we have now obtained and we put it to good use, engage in the practice of the Dharma now while we have it, while we have this very opportunity, then again and again we will obtain a precious human life, again and again placing us on the path from happiness to happiness, the path from bliss to bliss. And in the text, the words of my perfect teacher, Sangngak Rinpoche's words of my perfect teacher, the section on impermanence goes into quite some detail about the nature of this impermanence. And within this section, within this chapter, among the details, it lays out that this world's outer vessel as well, the outer vessel of our world, is also in the nature of impermanence. It is in constant change, the nature of impermanence, as are all of the inner beings. All of the inner beings within this vessel, one after another, come to meet with impermanence. They come to die. There is not one who has been born who has not died. Is there one who has been born that still remains? No, they have died without exception, one after another. And all is in the nature of impermanence. And you can read more about this in the words of my perfect teacher.
Imagine the Rogiova, that's some other Yamoyores. Tim second around Sola Yonkers and Tisu Mapsichimata, Rasana, Yerambo, Shigomarisano Tangura, Ina, Tindin Yomaris, Susola Tansote Yomaris, Kading around Sotin, Chomatapa, Tevionate, and Hakumaris, or Tendin, the Latin Carson, the Carla Yurisana, Tuzola, Matapas, and Chomatapas, and Richico language.
And of those, of those who were born 100 years before this time, there are very few still remaining. Most of them have already passed on. And we all have experience as well in our own personal experience, knowing family, friends, those that we know who have also passed on. We have personal experience of others dying, others meeting with impermanence and dying in this world. And so we may think that actually our own death will not come for a long time, that we will remain for a long time. Our own death is far into the future. But we can't really be confident about that. If you have any kind of feeling of confidence that you will not meet with your own death until far into the future, then this is a sign that one hasn't yet come to really understand the nature of impermanence. And so what we all really must come to understand well is the nature of impermanence. So we must train in impermanence. We must train the mind. It is said that the mind training on impermanence is extremely important because if we train the mind in contemplating impermanence, understanding impermanence, then we will know the importance of preparation. We will know what to do to be prepared. And understanding impermanence and that our lives are not stable and they are not certain, then we will not want to waste any time whatsoever. We will not want to waste any time in any meaningless distractions, but rather we will always be careful to want to engage in virtue, engaged in practice. Studying impermanence and training on impermanence is a way that will bring us to the point of mind of urgency onto our practice, really urging us on, having a sense of urgency to constantly practice. We will understand that going here and there, doing kind of meaningless things is really a waste of time, and we will not want to do that. But every day, rather, we will want to prepare ourselves. Understanding impermanence, we will be urged on from the heart to engage in virtue. And thus, training in impermanence is extremely crucial.
렌즈로 그때는 같은 tamchima tabani to the hamago sonena ta ding zuma tabaji yon denji kashipe galenten den so rashi jabya ta den yong be ba ta to so tamche karsna de bangbo lo jong me yon de ta so teni tamate de chape res.
And so then we must understand that from today onward, then we must train in impermanence. We must come to truly understand its nature. For then, one day when we are met with some kind of extreme, sudden, adverse circumstance, we will not be unprepared thinking, oh, why did this happen? Where did it come from? Be just completely surprised out of the blue. But rather, if this happens with a family or a friend, we will understand that it is just impermanence, it is just the nature of things, because we will have already been prepared for it. But if we're not prepared for it, when something so suddenly like this comes before us, or one of our loved ones or dear ones, then we will not be ready for it at all. It will be a time of extreme difficulty, more difficult really than it needs to be. But if one first trains in impermanence, understands the transient nature of things, then when this comes before one, then one will be ready for it. One will not be surprised. One will really be able to willingly and with some understanding enter into this period. And so people really need to be prepared. We really need to be prepared for this.
Then I certain also money then do it any Mutapa Lujon where the pay kitchen which have arrested. And Lujon your soy night Tajishiba and Matanga, money the Haku yours. The reaching around the Tisu Hapshima or Lebur Batani. Then gang down and trigger Tinikas and Cham Tabalas or Leviatilla. Money Lujon to your soy, that could think Chimbu Chegamares. Then it or the Takur around Jim, but Tinding around Chasanga Lebuyoba. So Jibula Muserget and the Gang Chimbuti Lega Maimba. Simjin Sangmala heavy yobaji. Simjin Sangmala de Garsana, Garsana Chilga Nanchiga, dignited in Chegioba. Not on the Chimbaga Tenicas, Ramjin the Hako on the Commissar, Laparkatani, Dignichimut and Zumatret and Yachig Marias. The Richan Garsana, Chugan la Samotani, local Chesicin, Simbates Kuyam Boji, Semchig, Simbati, around Chuganani, Shepan Mountain, Jampen de Via Langa de Yoruba, but the Richidelian, and Chugan Yaman Jet on the Hakubudes.
Maybe champagne,
and Matapa Hakon and choose a summer tangra. Choose some of the children, Mother Champagne chair, 10 year water. Janchim chok the same country, Chegure, Mulan Yonje country, Chegure, to Zotama Hakura. And rigid the thing parable and Yonje chair, Janchim with Sem Guguni, Jampan Pantaya, to Zotamchik and Gassana. Sim down Jachet and over, and the Jampan Langa Yuba to Zotama Shigres.
And so when we train in something, when we engage in mind training, this brings us to the point of really knowing it. When we really know it, then we are prepared. So when something quickly comes up, like a sudden death situation, we won't be surprised at all. We just won't be completely flabbergasted, just completely destroyed by this. But rather we will understand, oh, this is the nature of things. This happens to people. This happens to all people. And so one will be able to avoid this great, great suffering, which is avoidable if one trains in impermanence. If training in impermanence, one already comes to know and accept the sufferings of birth, aging, illness, and death. You will just understand that it is the nature of things. And so then you will not have to actually meet with any unnecessary suffering, on top of these ordinary sufferings, the unnecessary suffering that comes from not being prepared, and not being unprepared and narrow-minded. But rather, when we understand impermanence, we will want to practice the Dharma. In practicing the Dharma, then we will know the practices of altruistic action, engaging in activities that are focused on benefiting all other people and on compassion, bodhicitta. In this way, we will benefit other people, and also we will ourselves have gain a vast and open mind, become very open-minded people. And so one will, in training in impermanence, understand the necessity and usefulness of never wasting any time at all, but rather constantly making use of the time while we have this precious human body to engage in things such as listening to the Dharma, contemplating the meaning, and meditating, and so on, and engaging on the path. One will always want to be enthusiastic about engaging in those. And so these are methods in the Dharma. These are the different kinds of activities, the way we can engage in spiritual practice or in Dharma. How can we do that? We can listen to Dharma teachings and think about their meaning and contemplate, and then we can actually bring them into our own meditation practice. So simply put hearing, thinking, and meditating are methods. They are methods, and we have the sufferings of birth, aging, illness, and death, and we have not gotten beyond these sufferings. We have not resolved these sufferings in our life of birth, aging, illness, and death. And the way to actually to do this is to come to understanding and acceptance of these very things, birth, aging, illness, and death, through the methods of the Dharma, through the methods of engaging in hearing, thinking, meditating, practicing the Dharma. That's how we eliminate them. That's how we rid ourselves of these very sufferings. Have the scientists of the world found a way to rid people of the sufferings of aging and illness and death? Can we buy any kind of a resolution for these sufferings at the store? We can't. The only way to resolve them, to get past them, is to come to understand them, accept them through our engagement in the Dharma. And so to rid ourselves of, or to resolve these sufferings of birth, old age, illness, and death, or we could say to be liberated from them. To be liberated from them through the Dharma. What actually is the Dharma? If simply put, we can say that the Dharma is the path that leads us to being able to resolve and rid ourselves of the sufferings that we right now have no independence over. We have no independence over the suffering of birth, aging, illness, and death. However, the path of Dharma is the path of liberation that liberates us from these sufferings. When we practice the Dharma well, when we engage in listening well to the Dharma teachings and then contemplating well, think about the meaning very well and contemplate, and then as well take it into our very practice of meditation, then we will come to a point where certain qualities of through these activities, certain qualities will become evident and manifest in your mind stream. And these qualities being mastery over your mind, gaining independence over one's mind, gaining mastery over one's own mind. And this comes through practicing the Dharma well. We have no independence over our mind, do we? Well, actually, maybe some of you here actually do, and if that is the case, then I completely rejoice in that. But if it's the case that, like me, like us, we do not have independence right now, then we must get really, encouraged and urged on to gain this very independence. However, if we gain mastery, if we gain this mastery, these qualities of mastery over our own mind, we gain independence, freedom of choice. Right now, we will gain freedom of choice and independence over birth. For example, right now, we have no choice where we are born. We are born without any independence, any personal independence to that matter whatsoever. But if we gain mastery over our mind, rather, we can choose where we are born. We can choose our the situation of our next rebirth. So gaining mastery over one's mind, one can gain mastery and independence over birth and also over death. One can choose when it's their time to die. One can prolong the time of one's death, deciding that one does not want to die right now, but rather prolong it till later. Right now, we do not have this independence. So if we practice the Dharma well, the qualities that we can achieve are beyond comprehension. They are extremely powerful abilities and qualities that cannot even be enumerated. Through such expansive qualities, when we bring these qualities to expansive culmination, then we are at a point where we can willingly come to accept these things of birth, aging, illness, and death, willingly enter into these experiences, and we will be past the point of where we are now, having them completely unresolved. But rather, through practicing the Dharma well, we will be able to, in order to practice the Dharma well, we should enter the path of hearing, thinking, and meditation. We should authentically practice hearing, thinking, and meditation. And then with willingness, acceptance, we will transcend these experiences of birth, aging, illness, and death, leading beyond into the state of Buddhahood and on to the state of the unchanging path of bliss.